Well, it is 12 noon, and it is time to talk leadership and coaching. Thank you for joining me. I'm Ken Evraire. This is the virtual potluck leadership and coaching segment. We've had some fantastic guests. Right from the get-go, I always get fired up about having the opportunity to pick the brains and the hearts, people who've been there, done it, coach people up, and take great pride in setting other people up to succeed. Now, of all of our guests, when it comes to aeroplan points, this gentleman probably tops them off. He's got a passion for coaching, and I think in a lot of ways he's ahead of his time, because I met him years ago when he was coaching with the Ottawa UGGs, and I remember his approach to coaching was similar to what a lot of the great coaches are applying today. And when I put my hit list of all the coaches and guests that I want to have on the segment, his name came up for sure. And I'm just glad that if there's a good thing about this coronavirus, if there ever is a good thing, is that this guy is sitting still and he's in one place so we can catch up to him. That is David Leger. David, thank you for joining us. We appreciate you making time for me on this day.
Ken, great to be with you, and thank you for that nice introduction.
Let's get into coaching and the genesis of your journey. When did you realize that coaching was your thing, your passion?
Good question. So my background is a little bit unique, probably. I was a referee, and so most coaches had played their sport. I was a level 6 referee in Canada, and I got selected to go to Switzerland. And so I went and worked as a professional referee in Switzerland, and luckily my wife came with me. So we lived in an apartment in the middle of Switzerland, and I refereed 3 or 4 times a week. And it was a culmination of what I wanted to do, Ken. I wanted to always be paid and be a professional referee. That was my lifetime goal to that point. And, you know, as I was in the middle of the season, I think what I realized more is that I was struck by the leadership part of teams and how they functioned, more so than I was in the role that I was occupying as a referee. So, you know, I had good discussions with my wife, and I just said, this is the life I want to be in. I actually was on a leave of absence from the federal government. I had a real safe job.
Right.
Could have spent the rest of my life, you know, in a good, secure position. And I just made a really bold move to say, this is not the life I want to lead. I want to jump out of bed every day and look forward to my day. And so that's sort of when it started. I started to just try and find out how to get, you know, certified and get on the process of coaching thereafter.
Well, I've had this discussion with other people in the past, and I find there's 2 types of people. There's the person who's in the crowd who wants to be on the green putting, wants to be on the field catching the pass or on the ice scoring a goal, or in your case, coaching. They want to shift from an observational perspective versus being immersed and in the thick of things and being part of all the decision making and something that's very organic in nature, which is, I think, part of our DNA, is it not?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I was an athlete as well as a young boy. I played hockey and I played football for many years, and I was a captain for most of the teams that I was on. I always liked seeing how coaches were doing things. Then I was interested. I just, when I became a referee, I had to be this neutral, not associated with the team guy. So I just had a burning desire to get involved from that and explore. And I had no idea it was going to lead to, you know, this lifetime that I've been in the last number of years. But, you know, probably like you get confronted with opportunities, you open the door and then you dive into the room. You don't just tiptoe into the room. So I've dove into this lifestyle, and this is something that I've come to enjoy and love.
Was it the case too, maybe of you, because refereeing level 6 hockey and in that form, it's elite hockey, fast-paced hockey, but you have a lot of conversations with coaches. You want to make sure you have a respectful distance between your role as official, but also you want to stay connected to the coach, let them know, okay, the temperament of the game's changing a little bit, reel your guys in, or explain a call to a coach. but you're probably also being able to see some coaches and you're thinking, boy, I wouldn't have done that. Why would he make that decision? And you find yourself saying, geez, instinctually, I would have done this instead. It would have saved me a lot of time and set my team up for success. Did you see stuff like that happening?
Yeah, I think when you watch different coaches, there's certain things you're going to always take from people and certain things where you're going to say, no, I would never do that. And I think, as you know, from being a professional athlete playing at the highest level, I think the one tentacle that a professional athlete has is he has a pretty good smell test on whether you're sincere or not.
Yeah.
And if you're not real, it's pretty hard to be able to capture, a team's attention. And they'll turn you off really quickly. So I think as I started to coach, I remember approaching a Canadian guy that was coaching with one of the pro teams over there. And I just asked him, what's the process? And he directed me to, come back home, get involved in the Hockey Canada coaching program. And he gave me some great advice. He said, it's a network business. And so all that just means is it tap into the people that may have an influence that are where you want to be. And so effectively, that's what I did, Ken. I came back to Canada, came back to my job, and I made a decision. I wanted to come back to Ottawa because most of my contacts and networks were here. So I hopefully, I started at a fairly good level. I was a junior A assistant coach in my very first year.
Okay.
And that was a contact that I had that directed me to a team in Hawkesbury. And so it was really from that basis where I just started to learn day by day of what was involved in coaching.
There's a process, there's a grind, and you go from a gig with the federal government where you're getting benefits, everything else covered, pretty safe. And I always laugh the idea about someone in the government saying, well, I get benefits. Well, good, because you're going to need those benefits because eventually it's going to kill you if you're not happy working in the government. But then you make this plate tectonic shift into something that has a distinct passion for you. But it also, there's an ask that you're making of your wife, and there's an ask that you're making of yourself of, can you really do this? It's great to have an idea. Now, people have great ideas, but then a week from then, they realize, no, what was I thinking? When did you realize that, okay, I got to jump into this and I got to see this, wherever this takes me? And how valuable was the support from your wife?
Huge. I mean, my wife, she's an elementary teacher and she's allowed me to pursue this. And, I would say for anybody that thinks it's any passion you choose is an easy road is just lying to you, because I've had all kinds of landmines that I walked into along my journey, and where you and I connected was when I was at the University of Ottawa, and that was a full life experience, and it probably could have killed me if I wasn't careful, because it was a full landmine.
Yeah,
it's way better now for how the university has supported the program, but. To be honest, my wife, I remember my contract wasn't renewed at Ottawa U. It was 2010 or 11. I had never looked outside of Ottawa U for a job, so I never insulated myself. I said to my wife, just give me 5 years to see if this is something that I can, find a way. If after the 5 years it's not gaining momentum, we'll stop and get a real job.
That's amazing, because in those 5 years, if she says no, then you're not going to be a lot of fun to live with for 5 years.
Yeah, to her credit, I think that's something that she said to me a number of times, that it was just, it was something that wouldn't have been fun to be with Dave Leger later on if he was, forced into doing something. And it's, we're lucky. I think you've done lots of things in your life that, it probably hasn't made sense to anybody else but you. And at the end of the day, you have to live with yourself too. So
that's it. When you talk about authenticity and with other people, coaching people, you have to be genuine, you have to be authentic. And if you're able to do that, then making the tough decisions aren't as difficult. They're still hard. And especially when it comes to releasing and cutting athletes. But if you're authentic and honest and genuine with them, then they understand. remember Joe Palpao saying every athlete who comes to training camp starts off with an A plus. Now, if you come into the room and we're releasing you and you're cut, it's not because you majorly screwed up, but you're just maybe not good enough at this level, and you know that. It's not like there should be an arc of surprise attached to that experience, but authenticity and being genuine, and maybe your wife being an elementary teacher and knowing what she gets from that experience made it easier for her to support you.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good point, and I think that being honest, like I think when you deal with athletes, I find younger athletes. I've coached U18s, I've coached U20s, and I think they're not ready yet to confront the realities of where they sit in their sport. I think adults, they know. Like you had a good point you said there. When you're telling a player that he's just not up to the level of the competition, athletes that are adults, they know. They don't have to be told that. And so you don't ever have to be disrespectful to somebody. But I think being straight up and honest, I mean, I'm lucky that, that I haven't been in too many difficult situations. But you're right. When you're dealing with an adult, you're telling him his livelihood is not going to be available any longer. Those are real difficult.
How has an athlete changed since you started coaching? And how has it forced you to grow and change and evolve as a coach as well?
Yeah. So I'm 52, born in 68. My era was, I don't remember being asked if I liked something or if I agreed with it by any of my coaches. It was like, okay, we're doing this. And my response was always, well, okay, no problem. I'll do that. And I had never, I would never dream of asking, why are you asking us to do this? Or why do we have to run this or that?
Right.
And I think that the biggest difference is athletes now they just like to understand. They want to understand why you're asking them to do it. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of them just need to understand how it benefits them.
Yeah.
And I think as you learn how to communicate with this generation of athlete, you just have to build the why and the what it's going to produce for them in your introduction of what you're doing. So you don't come on to practice and say, we're going to do this warm-up drill because it's going to be a bag skate at the start of practice. You get on and you explain, we're doing this so that it connects with how we want to play as a team. And then athletes will accept that. I think if you're just a dictator, they're just going to turn you off real quickly.
I've seen coaches who are dictators. I've seen coaches who really trust their talent and had great athletes. Case in point, Brian Kilray, he had some great teams. I had a conversation with Brad Shaw, the former 67 and Sen and coach now at Columbus Blue Jackets. And we were talking about flow, and Killer essentially ran the same practice day in and day out. And he really trusted the athleticism and the decision-making of his players. Now, when that flow was taken away and playoffs came around, they started grinding, and now guys can get away with punching other guys in the head in the postseason. Then game changes, and maybe that's part of the reason why he only won the one Memorial Cup with the 67, even though he had some great teams. And then I talked to John Shabbat and watched John Shabbat run practices in Hull when he was coaching with Claude Julien and Benoit Gru and the crew there. And they took marginally talented teams, and they explained the why, when, who, where, and all that. They say, okay, we're going to do this. You're going to do this. Then this is when we're going to do it. All the information. So allowed them to become better decision makers and more immersed in the process. Where do you fall in between those two ranges of the coaches?
Well, I certainly have heard that anecdote about Brian Kilray, and I certainly have watched that team since the early 70s and respected immensely. And I've gotten to know Brian, not really well. But what he is a master at is building relationships with people. He makes everybody understand that they've got an importance to the team. And whether it comes in a chirp that he'll give, or whether it comes in a pat on the back to somebody that needs it, I think he's a master at that.
Yeah,
he really just knows how to make people feel important. I think with certainly Ben Grew and John Shabbat, I think you're exactly right. They would take the time to explain how it's going to benefit them.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a relationship guy as well. I think I'm a relationship guy first. I think I've learned that over my time. I wasn't always like that. I don't think I was a real, I mean, for lack of better, I was a bit of a dick at different times when I was at Ottawa U, and I was just probably more stressed in the rest of my job to be an effective coach. And I didn't really learn to be a good coach until I left Ottawa U, to be honest with you. And so I would say I'm more of a teacher right now. And I think I'm a people person as I try to grab their, attention, and just you want them to trust the fact that you're going to have their back, and you can't be insincere about that. And it's really important, Ken, I think when you're dealing with people, that you have to be letting them understand you're going to try and help them get their full potential out of what they're capable of.
Yeah, I think a coach has to build credit with his team, so when the coach does screw up, because coaches will screw up, when that coach does screw up, he's got credit with his team to say, okay, and admits it, owns it, and say, okay, boys, I'll own it. And that's all you need to hear. I remember I had a coach in Hamilton. His name was Dave Beckman. I don't mind naming because I've learned I learned almost probably as much from bad coaches as I have from the great coaches. And we played a preseason game in Hamilton, and we lost. I think it was to the Argos. And it was a close game, but it was preseason, right? So everybody plays. And it's a nothing game. The vets didn't really play, but he came in and he was pissed. And he starts screaming and he starts yelling. If anybody thinks that they're going to get a job after this, you can forget that. The guys I'm cutting will never play football again. I'm blackballing you out of football. You're done. And we're like, holy shit. Because this was going to be indicative of the way the season was going to go. And we played 5 days later here in Ottawa, and we won the game. And the veterans played a little more, so we were a better football team going into the regular season. And we felt pretty good after the game, but we also knew it was a preseason game. But he walked in, he was in tears. He said, I love you guys. For all those guys I have to cut, I guarantee I'm going to find you work somewhere else. My name's great in football. And he started name dropping Ara Parsig and all that kind of stuff. And we're just thinking, oh, this is going to be a long year, to a point where we were playing to compete and win games. We're playing and competing to stay safe. So we could see it the next game, the next paycheck, and next game hoping that the management would get rid of the guy because he was just a mess. And I'm sure you've seen some crazy crap, some crazy stuff along the way.
Yeah, I think that I think, again, I would say all those situations don't represent probably what that guy's true character is. And so to me, he's putting on some sort of an act. And I think seeing through the act, I would say it made me think about this too. Like the other thing that's really changed with this generation is they don't like to ever be embarrassed individually in front of their group.
Yes.
And I think it's the one thing as you give feedback to individuals. I don't think players have changed. That they don't mind hearing honest feedback. They just don't like people around them to hear it. So, I think as you hear about a coach coming into a room and giving it to a team, if you want to go around the room and individualize mistakes, you're going to turn a lot of this generation off, I would say too.
Does that represent a shift in parenting?
Yeah, I think
I say because the old school dad would say, the coach ripped you. Well, he ripped you for a reason.
Yeah.
Whereas now, okay, it has to make sense, it has to be justified, and the coach almost has to make sure he sets the table, or she sets the table. Say, when I'm critical, I'm not critical of you. I'm critical of the decision you made in that moment that affected the outcome of what we're trying to accomplish.
Where it manifests itself, it's a good point. I think parenting is certainly connected to it. And we all want the best for our kids. But I find in this generation, I'm talking, the 10, 11, 12, 13-year-olds, part of that, kids don't really handle getting cut very well. And so when you're cut from a team when you're younger, it can produce two emotions. It can be, I'm out. I've had enough.
That's the
And
big one. I quit.
yeah, or it could be, well, I'll show you the next time. And I've sort of drawn this analogy to a bunch of different people. Like it's a video playing timeline for kids. So when you're playing a game, and I know this because I played on the Wii with my kids when they were young. And if I start a game and the game's not going well for me, well, I just hit reset.
Yeah.
And so I start my game over, and nobody knows that I've just almost got an 18 on that golf hole that I was trying to do well at. And I bring it back to kids. I think kids are used to kind of resetting their performance if it's not perfect for them. And I think I learned more as an athlete getting cut than I ever did about any win or championship or anything. And I think that's probably your time. It's my time as well. And so I'm not sure if it made me any harder as a person, but I just think it helped me have a little bit more drive and compete to deal with things when it wasn't perfect for me.
Was that inevitable, knowing as we grew up, the number of kids who get cut far outweighed the number of kids who make teams? So eventually that's going to affect their parenting style and maybe how they connect with their kids. I don't want to set my kid up for failure to have to deal with that kind of emotional experience. And then you also have the kid who says, you know what, I use that great example. It's always used all the time. Michael Jordan got cut by his school team. And he came back and made the team after working really hard. Yep. What they failed to say is he grew 6 inches as well. But he got cut, and he was so passionate about being successful that he went back to work. And kids don't necessarily go back to work. They quit. They play another sport. I helped out with a team of elite athletes, and their captain, their draft year had passed. And so they're playing their second year with the club and kind of mailed it in. And coach said, well, I'm going to take away your power play time. Okay, well, I'll just quit. And that, I could never imagine that happening back in the day when athletes said, okay, I'll just quit. And mom and dad just invested in competitive hockey. They're investing, what, $10,000, $15,000, $18,000 a season. Yeah. This is the AAA type hockey. Yeah. Okay, well, I'll just quit. So if it doesn't mean anything to you for you to quit, what are you doing there in the first place? Because you're setting yourself up for some habit forming behavior where you're 25 doing something that, well, I'm not really attached, I'll just quit. So you end up in that space. Does that?
Yeah, it's not unlike in school. You know, if your child comes home and is sour about his mark or her mark in a certain subject, and if your default question is, well, what's the teacher teaching you? Instead of, okay, well, like, what kind of work did you put in to prepare yourself for the test or exam or that assignment, and how much passion did you put into it? And I think it's difficult because you're telling parents how to prepare their child for success in the future, and putting the responsibility on the leader for your success or failure is setting them up for a difficult adulthood, I think. And sports is just a microcosm of that. I think, the lessons you learn when you're playing sports, and I mentioned to you before, like I played a lot of football growing up, and I loved it for not any success that I ever really had in the sport, but I was surrounded by good older players. I learned how to be part of a group. Mm-hmm. I learned how to do just my little responsibility without any fanfare to serve the greater good. And I'm thankful to have had those lessons, and I'm lucky that I've had some good leaders around me. But I just think that's what sports can provide in the situations when you're dealing with adversity.
Yeah, I think sometimes with sport, especially elite sport, where you're investing a lot of money, now an athlete, a kid is 365 days of the year in hockey, right? Or whatever the sport is. They're so sport specific, and they're so goal oriented about getting drafted or getting that scholarship that they don't realize that the real value is in the relationships and the interplay and what you do to honor those relationships by working hard. Your words match your actions. Yeah. Right. You can say you're a great teammate, but when you're in the locker room, teammates know who the great teammates are.
Yep.
and I got an 11-year-old, I got a 9-year-old, and an 8-year-old. My 11-year-old, he's in that space now where I'm trying to teach him to work harder, work harder. That hard work will do a lot for you. Mm. And I think the lights come on for him a little bit. Not with the hope that he plays college football or replicates the path I went on. That's the last thing I want him to do. I just want him to work hard and benefit from the relationship so that when he sits down on Skype or whatever it's going to be, or Zoom or Facebook Live, and he connects with all his old teammates, like I have an opportunity to do. Yeah. We don't talk about the score of a game. We might go on about a championship and a funny play, but what we talk about is the relationships and the stuff that happened that brought us together, that connected us for life.
Yeah. I don't know if you've ever so I when I left Ottawa U, I went to Japan. I coached for
let's talk about your journey, because you're not a guy who said, well, you know what, it has to be the perfect gig for me, because I want to stay in my backyard, I want to stay in my lane. Your lane has essentially become the entire planet.
Yeah. Well, so I've become a reader over my time as well, because the year after I finished at Ottawa U, I actually spent till September here. And it was somebody in my network that contacted me at the end of September and said, hey, would you ever consider going to Asia? And this was right after the Fukushima power plant had happened. So 2011, right. I guess. And the team I was going to was like 4 hours from there. So I said, yeah, sure. I would be interested in that. And I ended up going, and it was great. It was the first year, Ken, that I ever just focused on power play, PK, D-zone coverage. And I was able to hone my skills as a coach.
Right.
And, you're by yourself. So I ended up reading a little bit more. And the book I'll direct you to is called The Talent Code. And I would direct that for anybody that's in a leadership position for how to tap full potential of it could be a singer, it could be a musician, it could be a juggler, it could be an athlete of any sort. So The Talent Code is by Daniel Coyle. And anyway, it was in that timeline that I started reading and really trying to understand, and it changed me a lot as a coach, Ken, because the Talent Code just talks about allowing mistakes to be the route to correcting your skill set, and reflecting on what the mistake was, on the roots of the mistake, and making sure to set yourself up so you're not making the same mistake by focusing on how to actually get beyond the obstruction or the obstacle to do it. So when I'm in Japan, I'm able to, obviously I'm by myself and I'm not speaking the language. I'm not understanding a lot of what's being said, but it really was an opportunity for me to go back and redefine, how I wanted to become as a coach.
Yeah.
And I've since become a lot more technical in how I view the game, but I've never lost, that ability to make sure there's connections as well with people.
I love it when the coach will scream at a kid, do this. He says, okay, but how?
Yeah.
Right? Teach me the how. Teach me all those things. Don't put me out there and go make things happen.
Yeah.
Teach me, because most athletes are students. They want to absorb information. And I think the key for that athlete to be successful in being that student of the game is that their coach is also a student of the game. Yeah, and if they know what they're talking about, that coach knows what he's talking about. So when the coach says, hey, listen, Ken, in this situation, we're going to do this. Knowing full well when we do it, this is what they're going to do. And when they do that, this is what we're going to do. So now you look like, now you're taking the role of sensei.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, further to what we talked about, when you're a receiver running your route and the ball comes to you and you're either in the wrong spot or you drop it, well, you're the first one that knows that. And you're the first one that knows that's a mistake. I don't as a coach have to come up and tell you, but you're right. I have to show you, okay, well, maybe zone in on your footwork so you plant yourself and your hands are in a better, to me, that's the fruit of coaching, is just giving people the roadmap to how to have success for their own sport.
What I love about coaching is that it allows you to pursue infinite avenues.
Yeah.
Creative, to set other people up for success. And what will work for athlete A will not work for athlete B, but will work for something else will work for that athlete. And to take all that and build that recipe in a bid to be successful, in that one moment, and to be prepared for those 4 or 5 moments in the game that will determine the outcome.
Yeah.
A lot of people watch a game. They'll watch a hockey game for 60 minutes and go, wow, that was 60 minutes of hockey, stop time. I'm there for a couple hours. But it really is 4 or 5 plays, and it's about mental aptitude, emotional intelligence, and do you really practice and focus and do the things you need to do in advance of your competition? Do you do it genuinely? If you do it, then you're going to know what it feels like to be dog-ass tired in the third period, because you've been dog-ass tired in practice, but you found something in you to make sure you still succeeded.
Yeah, and it's a good point you bring up, because there's no one patented solution that you can just staple to every circumstance. Yeah. And bringing back this book, there was one point where there was this singing instructor, and he was an older gentleman that had coached and taught singing for years. And it was the reference point in the book where it said that there's an art to his vocation. And I remember reading that segment of the book thinking, hockey's a funny sport where everybody thinks, well, did you play for Ken Evraire? Yeah, I played for him. He was this or he was that as a coach. And everybody thinks that, well, if Ken Evraire was like that as a coach when he was, my coach 10 years ago, he's got to be the same guy now. And that's just, to me, that's what hockey sometimes does. It paints certain coaches as with a certain brush. Right. And I remember reading that thinking, well, this is an art. I want to get better at this thing. And I want to have different experiences, and I'm okay to make mistakes myself. I just want to make sure I'm getting better. And, it may be that it takes me till I'm 55 or 60 before I've really, become an expert at this. But I continue down a path of just trying to, improve. And I think if your athletes sense that from you, they know that you're trying to improve. I think they know you're trying to help them improve.
I agree. And there's a trust factor connected to that.
Yeah.
Right. Because you've been put into situations. What's the most challenging circumstance for you going in as a coach? Because you've been a bit of a hired gun to come in and take over some situations and turn things around overnight.
Yeah. I would say, so I worked in the ECHL, so the East Coast League, and I worked with the Senators ECHL team just for a half season. I got sent to a place called Evansville, Indiana, and it was a great experience because I went in there thinking, okay, well, these could be guys, they're just sort of playing out the string.
Yeah.
I thought they'd be older guys. But it was far from it. It was a bunch of guys driven to get to the American League.
Yeah.
And then we finished that season. The team folded, and I got hired to be a head coach the following year in Elmira with the ECHL team. And that was a challenge because that team was going bankrupt. So it was a challenge from the get-go because there wasn't a support for the coach, and I ended up getting fired by January. And it was just, we lost games, and there was no ability to change that. So it was a bit of a helpless feeling. And, those are, I remember, but it's funny, Ken, because I came back from Elmira and I got a phone call in February after getting fired in January from somebody that I never knew in my life.
Right.
He said, hey, I heard you're a good teacher. Would you be interested in going to Poland to work with their under 20, under 18? So it was one of those where, something that closed down just opened up quickly. And I would say this too, in coaching, you never know who's talking about you when you're not around.
The funny thing is, in hindsight, I remember I had my best year in football in the CFL. Next year, I blew my knee out. And I became so uber-focused on trying to get back to football. 5 knee surgeries later, the major repair, then 4 more to clean it out a little bit for scar tissue. I was so focused on dancing with a devil I knew, and what became a very abusive relationship, self-abuse, emotionally, physically, that it turned me away from football and turned me away from what was a passion to go coach. I had every intention of going to coach at some junior college in the States, sleep on a couch in some place and hone my craft. And I didn't because I had to get away from the game.
Yeah.
And then I eventually got into TV and then responsibility. And then the whole idea of, okay, now I have 3 kids. I don't think I'm available to go coach football in Germany right now.
Yeah.
Right. And so to be able to get up and go and say, okay, I'm going to Poland to coach, that has to be an exciting opportunity and a moment for you.
Yeah. What we've tried to do, my wife, and we have 2 daughters, and one is in her first year university, the other's in grade 10. And I remember hearing, it was Bill Belichick. It was a book I was reading about him. And he always said that he wanted his family to have one home base.
Yeah.
So I remember taking that thinking, okay, well, we want our girls to have just the foundation of being at home. They have one home. And if I have to go somewhere and coach and do something different, I'm only going for 7-8 months.
Yeah.
So like a military posting. Mm-hmm. But we always brought the girls to wherever I was. So the girls have seen Japan. They've seen Midwestern US. They've been to Poland. They've been to Hungary. Wherever I've been, they've come and experienced a little bit of it. And it's given them a little bit of a life experience from that perspective. So, it is what it is, and it's life. I think when I was at Ottawa U, when you and I knew each other, I was home all the time, but I don't think I was home all the time. I was always on my phone. I was always recruiting. I was always trying to fundraise. I was never present when I was around. Now it's I may be physically gone for 7-8 months.
Yeah.
But when I'm home, I'm home. And the technology is so different now, Ken. Like probably even when you were away at school, for you to call your parents on a Sunday night long distance, that was a big deal. Like you're calling them from a phone. You don't see anybody. Now with technology, I mean, I use WhatsApp with my wife. We talk every day when I'm away.
Funny thing with my parents, especially my dad, if I wanted to talk to him on a Saturday after a football game, I just turn beside me at the bar and say, "Hey, what'd you think of the game?" Funny story. I actually left him at a house party, and I was a bit of a rapscallion in university. Big surprise. And I left my dad at a house party with a defensive lineman on the linebacker down the basement drinking beer. He's got my Laurier jacket on, and he's chewing tobacco. He's drinking beer, having a great time, living his life, right? And some guy was looking for me. Supposedly, I may have tried to court his girlfriend. Supposedly, it hasn't been proven in court. And like, we're looking for Ken Evraire. Yeah, he's downstairs. We're looking for Ken Evraire. Yeah, he's over there. He is in the corner. It's my old man. And my old man's hanging out the D lineman. And meanwhile, I'm back at home in bed, sleeping, sore from the football game. Now with technology, you're right. You can just house the game right in real time, right afterwards, right? So you can actually still very much parent in a lot of ways through technology today.
Yeah, I think for me, I mean, it's everybody's got their own life to walk, and we're all going to end up in the ground at some point. So you better enjoy the time that you're able to spend. And those are easy words to say. I've been lucky and really fortunate. My wife easily could have shut this down a long time ago, and I'd have been working wherever. But I love what I do. The team that I joined in January last year, I was disappointed to leave the junior team in Canada, but it just happened that I left to go to a team that I was with before. And, it's Dunaújvárosi is the name of the town. It's a small town about 40 minutes south of Budapest. Right. And, I could walk to the rink, groceries on the way home. Like it's a real easy lifestyle to live. So
there is a simplicity to that, is there not? And so it's not complicated. It's almost like you feel like you get all your ducks in a row. The girls are great. You're being supported by a family that loves you, that wants you to pursue your passion. And so you're not burdened by a guilt that maybe some other coaches have because you have to leave the family.
Yeah.
And to be able to wake up and say, okay, I'm in my right time, in my right place. And that's a pretty powerful place to be.
Yeah, and I think even as a coach, like you feel more comfortable in your skin as you've coached different people and had different experiences. It's just that. Like I think it's a complicated thing to be a coach. It is an art, and there is a craft that you're trying to always improve at. But I think as you go through different experiences, you feel way more comfortable in your skin. So for this last team, Ken, I traveled through the night. I walked off the plane. I dropped my stuff off in my apartment. I got brought to the rink
Yeah.
and literally walked inside the rink, walked to the dressing room, shook hands with every player, said, "Hi, I'm Dave."
Yeah.
And I coached the game that night.
Wow.
And yeah. And then, the next day I ran the first practice with the team. And, it's, I don't think I would have ever been able to do that, say 10, 15 years ago, but I feel okay doing that now.
I was going to say, I was going to ask you a bit of a trick question. Who are the coaches you looked up to when you decide to get into coaching? And can that be a good thing and also a negative thing? Because you try to be a Scotty Bowman, you try to be a Roger Nielsen, when really the journey is about becoming Dave Leger.
Steve Millington.
Okay.
You know who Steve Millington is?
No.
Yeah. High school football coach. J.S. Woodsworth is where I went. And he was my football coach for 3 years. Right. Not a screamer, not a yeller. Great with everybody. My school, JS, you probably know Mark Brown, David Haar, maybe. We had an elite team in high school, and they'd had a great history of success at JS way before I was ever there.
Right.
And his footprints and impact was on that program for years and years.
Right.
He probably wouldn't know that I think he was a great model for me. I had other really good coaches growing up in different sports, but for how to treat people and how to get your message across, he was perfect.
That's interesting. I think for me, it was a guy named Clark Pulford, and his brother is Bobby Pulford.
Oh, yeah.
For hockey recognition, Toronto Maple Leaf, all that, Chicago Blackhawks GM and everything. I was playing football for the Ottawa Sooners, and we just lost the national championship. I was the youngest guy on the team, and they were living by the ethos, the F and F ethos. They were either going to fight or they're going to F that night because they're at Stony Mondays all the time and are at home. And after a year of it, of losing the championship, okay, I think I want something more. So my dad said, okay, grade 13, let's work on becoming a student athlete, but you're not going to do it here in Ottawa. Because in Ottawa, 2 degrees of separation, once you're kind of defined by your peers, that's who you are.
Yeah.
So he said, you're going to go do your grade 13 in Toronto and live with your sister. I said, great. Put me on that milk run bus, the Voyager bus at midnight, and get in at 8 a.m., 8 hours on this bus, stop it in Madoc, Tweed, all these places, right? So my sister lives in the Yonge and Eglinton, Roehampton area in Toronto. And she said, okay, there's 2 schools. You have to go register one of them, North Toronto or Northern. Both great schools. North Toronto had this kid, pretty good athlete named Dave Sapunjas playing football. Oh, yeah. He was younger. Yeah. So I went to North Toronto. I couldn't find the football coach and couldn't find anybody there. So I said, okay, I'll go check out Northern, 4 or 5 blocks away. And Northern, I walk in, and as soon as I walk in, I see this guy walking towards me. He's got gray hair. He's got the glasses on, but they're sunglasses. He's got a cool rugby shirt on. He's got these cool Adidas ROM shoes on, right? And he's got the painter pants on with it, right? And he's like, he stops me. He goes, "Hey, babe, what are you looking for?" I said, "Well, I want to register, but I also want to meet the football coach." He says, "Okay, you're talking to him." I said, "Well, I'm thinking of doing grade 13 and he's playing football." And he said, "Where'd you play?" Bell asked. I said, "Well, I just finished playing with the Ottawa Sooners junior football team. We lost the national championship to Edmonton." So he says, "I think you're going to make the team." I said, "Yeah, I think so too." But we only had 5 plays. We only had 5 plays, the whole offense. But the way he treated kids and athletes, we ran them with such precision and passion and loyalty to him that we got to the Metro Bowl. We lost the Metro Bowl to a much more talented football team. But the authenticity and the genuine love he had for all of us allowed us to excel, to compete at a higher level, because we weren't competing for us. We were competing for him, and we were competing for each other, and we were competing for our school. And it was the best time I had in football ever.
Yeah. You have a chance to get you touch base with him again after that and let him
Stayed
know?
in touch. He was diabetic, so he never took his insulin. So his vision was going. So when he wanted to find a player on the bench to throw in the field, he had to grab them by the face mask. Now, if you're looking from a distance, coaches grabbing the guy by the face mask. Oh my God, he's getting berated. It wasn't the case. He was just looking in the face mask to try to recognize the kid, and so he could send the right kid in for the play. And because of his diabetes and stuff, he ended up having some amputations and stuff, and he passed away a couple of years ago. And I named him Clark Pulford Field at the school and stuff. But the best time I ever had. And a lot of it had to do with the school was a big high school. Now, we didn't have necessarily a great hockey program, and I'm sure you probably recruited more kids who were junior players going up, graduating. But we had something like 2,400 students in the school.
Wow.
Big school. And my best friend was this kid, Mark Pauly, and he was an actor. Played the football team, didn't play much, but he was an actor. And his sister was Sarah Pauly.
Yeah.
And Megan Fallows, who was Anna Green Gables, went to the school. So all these really interesting people that fell way outside the scope of football allowed me to grow. So it wasn't, again, I think it was the first time I learned that as important as football wasn't all encompassing, defining me. It was a vehicle for me to go find myself.
Wow. Yeah. And that's good for your dad. I mean, that's impressive. I mean, that's a bit of a ballsy move to send your young lad off. And it's great that it worked out for you too. Do you think you would have had the same trajectory? Would you have gone to Laurier if you stayed in Ottawa?
No. I would never have gotten to where never. I think I was fortunate in that my dad was, one, a storyteller. Two, he's a former professional athlete.
Yeah.
Played pro baseball with Richie Allen and Pete Rose in the minors.
Yeah.
And so my dad was a bit of a unique, and my mom were unique in that my dad's Canadian. All of a sudden he's in Tampa playing baseball, homesick. And there's Pete Rose and these guys. And so the team says, "What can we do?" He says, "Well, we're gonna fly your girlfriend down here. She spends some time with and my mom." He ended up marrying her. My mom's mulatto, so she had to dye her hair blonde so they could live together in Tampa, Florida.
Oh.
So Richie Allen, who was an outspoken African American athlete, who should be in the All-Star, should be in the Hall of Fame, but because he was outspoken, the media will never vote him in. But there's him looking at my dad going, "Where in the hell are you from?" Right? And my dad never told stories about scores of games. He always told stories about the relationships and the people.
Yeah. No, it's good for him for having that, foresight to put you a little bit out of your comfort zone too. I mean, you play in a national championship, like it would be real comfortable to walk back into that team. So
yeah. Well, part of it too was that my coach of the Sooners, when I said, "Listen, I'm thinking of leaving. I want to play pro football. I don't think this is the way it's going to go. I want my degree. I want my education." And I was told, "Well, that's not going to happen for you. You're not that athlete." And to be fair, when you look at a team photo of me back in the day, and you pick up the guys, you would never have said, Ken Evraire is going to be that guy. But sometimes you have to take the leap of faith. And if you love something, then you're willing to go to Switzerland and ref.
Sure.
Or you're willing to take that gig in Poland, or you're willing to go to Budapest.
Yeah. That the ironic thing for me, and I don't know about you, but I'm the most Ottawa person there ever is. I grew up in Parkwood Hills, and I still drive through my old neighborhood.
Yeah.
I never thought of going outside of Ottawa ever. I never wanted to. Mm-hmm. I was just as content to stay here all the time. And I've probably seen more places than I ever thought I would. That's for sure.
But no, I think what happens is you end up valuing your Parkwood Hills experience far more because you've left and you've seen the world. You've walked a mile in other people's shoes and realized you're pretty blessed to have what you have.
I remember being in Japan. I took my kids through the grocery store across the street from my apartment, and we were the only sort of white folks walking through there. And it was a unique experience. And I remember telling my girls were, so that's like 10 years ago. So they're probably 13 and, maybe 7 by that time. And I'm just like, girls, now you know how it feels when somebody walks in your classroom and they're not from Canada and they're trying to figure out how to navigate their way, because it's when you're by yourself in a foreign country and you don't look like others, it's a really isolating experience. But
Sure.
anyway, it's like anything. You get through it, you figure it out, and the biggest one is you learn that you're a guest in whatever country you're in. It's not up to Japan to customize for this goofy Canadian. It's for me to figure out how to live in their lifestyle.
The funny thing is, when I went to Toronto, my nickname was Ottawa, almost like I came from another planet. I was only 4 hours down the 401 away. But it was just a new story that they didn't anticipate becoming part of their story. And I think that's the beauty of it, is that you've had an opportunity your story has so many layers to it.
Yeah.
Right. If you would have taken the traditional route, okay, I'm going to coach junior, then I'm going to coach in the minors, then I'm going to coach NHL, and 3 steps, nice, easy progression, A to B to C. But your route is boy, talk about an invaluable experience. And it's probably allowed you to grow as a coach, because you're seeing different cultures. And you know that some cultures you can't yell at athletes.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And again, the other part of it too is that, as the culture is changing and the age groups are changing, the different set of expectations for athletes are different. I certainly started coaching, 98, 99 is my first year, and it was still a screaming and yelling era then. But I think that's just changed over time, and even, you look at words and phrases that you and I would have used in our schoolyard that we just came off the top of our tongue without thinking anything different. You would never say anything, remotely close to that, this day and age. And that's not to say like we were all a bunch of people coming out of garages, but you said things that were, of the time. I certainly used phrasings when I was a young coach that never do it again, but it is what it is.
Yeah, it's funny. Growing up in Centertown, Somerset, Booth Street, Lawrence Street, it was such a melting pot of such a mix that you couldn't really be critical of anybody else, because at the end of the day, we were all poor.
Yeah.
We all had one pot to piss in. That was the common denominator. So you might as well care about each other. And the cool thing was, in our neighborhood, if someone showed up that we didn't know, we were like meerkats, right? Who's this? Right? That kind of attitude. We were very loyal to our neighborhood, as messed up and as screwed up as our neighborhood was, because we had so many great experiences. We were wealthy through those experiences. And the first time I realized we were poor, David, was when my dad decided to take us trick-or-treating after we did our run in our neighborhood. So get in the car. We're going to go trick-or-treat in Island Park. Yeah. Everybody has a lawn. Everybody has a tree. And everybody has their big house, right? You don't have to ride your bike around the street to go to the backyard, around the block to go to the backyard. So you go up a trick-or-treat. Not only did they give you treats, but they're giving away money. Like, Dad, these guys are so rich, they're giving away money. He says, no, son, that's UNICEF. That's for poor families. Well, that's us. I spent the next year trying to get my hands on a UNICEF box.
But I still think, I mean, you're probably you're better for it, whether you realize it now. How you treat people individually is going to serve you always very well. So
without a doubt. And I think in terms of the journey, if I had a choice between, again, from point A to point B, straight line, easy route, get there, or have to travel and see the world and maybe not get to my destination, but ironically being wealthier through all the experiences I didn't anticipate, I'd probably take that journey.
Yeah, and listen, I think getting up and doing something you love to do is I think the reward in all of it. I love seeing where some of the players that I've coached over time are now. There's so many police officers, lawyers, doctors, and that's fun to see them grow in their lifetime. You would go through that too. A lot of the guys that you coached when you did with the Invaders, I mean, you have lots of guys in different facets of their life, and it's fun to live vicariously through some of them as well.
Yeah, my mindset, my ethos when it comes to coaching, especially younger people, or specifically kids, is that 5 years down the road, when you're walking into a Freshco or you're walking into a Tim Hortons and you bump into one of your kids, are they happy to see you?
Yeah.
Right? If they walk away and there's that energy where, Jesus, what an asshole, then you may not have done the job.
Yeah. I spent time the last 2 years, year and a half. It was just good for me to be at home when I coached at the Canada Lasers in the Junior League. And I loved the energy around being with those players. I really came to enjoy that group of boys, and I'll look forward to following them, the next number of years. And I think, I'm lucky to have spent some time in their lives for sure.
When we get on the other side of this coronavirus pandemic, what's the horizon? What's the landscape for David Leger look like?
Well, I signed to go back to the team in Hungary, and Hungary actually they've started to open up the last couple of weeks. Like, they're opening access to the gym and facilities. I'm due to be back there August 1st. I think that's all to be determined until I'm on the plane. But sure. I mean, I'm expecting to be headed back there, by the end of July.
And then you get a chance to coach it up again.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's one of those things where I think that I think the world's going to come out of this totally changed, and I think all of us are going to have to adapt different methods for what we previously thought were the way to do things. Even this technology is perfect for these kind of situations. I spent lots of time watching webinars and doing different things, and it's all served a great benefit.
The great thing is you're a student of the game. This is just another chapter of this learning and growth process for you that will make you a better coach.
I hope so.
Yeah. David Leger, thanks, brother. I appreciate it.
Thanks, man. That was lots of fun. Thank you very much.